And I think we need to understand that where all that discomfort around grief and the grief process comes from, it's coming from a culture that doesn't know what to do with pain that it can't fix. Because we live in a society that's all about fixing people. Whether it's a broken leg or a broken heart, we want to fix it, and we want to fix it as fast as we can. We want to know, is there a pill or a treatment for this, and how quickly am I going to recover? But grief can't be fixed. It doesn't like being ignored. And when we try to suppress it, whether it's with a pill or willpower, it can have serious consequences to our mental and physical health, and it will come back and bite us in the ass. So is grieving any different now than it was, say, last century or 1,000 years ago? The answer is complicated because it's yes and it's no. Although the beliefs and practices around death have evolved over and over throughout history and in different cultures, grief itself is ancient. From the examples of primitive funerary rituals that we found in prehistoric graves, way before so-called civilized societies like Egyptians, Greeks, and Romans, in ancient cultures where rituals depended on whether the dead were honored or feared, and on into more modern antiquity, and up until fairly recently, death and funerary rites have always been part of a communal expression of grief. But much has changed this century because the world we grieve in now, few of us live in close-knit communities anymore. Many live hours or days away from family and the community of friends they grew up with, and more of us live in urban areas where we don't even know our next door neighbor, let alone the rest of the community. For many of us, the world we live in is fast, loud, and our community is primarily on social media platforms. And somehow we've also become incredibly uncomfortable with allowing ourselves or each other more time than it takes to receive a sympathy card in the mail or a few days off work to grieve a loss. So what happens when your inner emotional needs are completely out of sync with the expectations of the world around you? In today's episode, I want to talk about the often confusing, sometimes very lonely experience of grieving in our modern world. We'll talk about the difference between grief and mourning, how society often gets it wrong, and that's not anything new, how and why it seems to have changed, especially over the past half decade, and how we can figure out how to grieve in a way that supports our emotional needs, in spite of the demands of inboxes, Instagram, and unrealistic expectations. So let's dig into that. You know how life throws us curveballs? Nobody gets through this journey of life without a few storms. Welcome to Transformative Journeys. I'm your host, Joanna LaRue. Each week, I'll share my thoughts and insights and dig into strategies that can empower you to rediscover yourself, learn about transforming pain into power, building confidence to navigate life's challenges, and cultivating a life of meaning and joy. Join me on this journey of exploration and transformation. Welcome back to Transformative Journeys with Joanna, where we explore the meaningful messiness of being human. And I'm your host, Joanna, on my own journey of life, loss, healing, and resilience. And I'm still here trying to figure it all out with you. So when I talk about any of that, life, loss, healing, resilience, We're talking about things that are deeply personal, and so they're profoundly different for each of us. From our joys to our sorrows, the way we experience and express them are influenced by our personalities, our upbringing, our culture, and sometimes our religion. But we all grieve and we all mourn. So first, let's dip quick into the difference between grief and mourning, because they're really different yet interrelated experiences. Grief is internal. It's about feelings, emotional and physical, and it comes from inside of us. And there's no wrong way to feel when you're grieving, from sadness to anger to guilt, anxiety, exhaustion, numbness, and even sometimes relief. There's almost no end to the list of emotions that we can experience when we're grieving. Grief is emotional, physical, and like we talked about in last week's episode, it's cognitive, meaning it has a huge impact on our brain and our ability to think, concentrate, and make decisions. Mourning, on the other hand, is our outward expression of our grief. It's the things we do to express our grief. Part of this is the initial ways we might honor our loved ones shortly after their death, the funerals, the celebration of life, or the memorial services that we hold when we lay them to rest. But it can also include a need to talk about our loved one and what happened, creating mementos or keepsakes that remind us of them, and honoring special dates related to them. Historically, grief and mourning have been a public, communal, and usually ritualized activity with clear expectations around activities, timelines, behaviors. Things like the practice of holding the night-long vigil to watch over the deceased, called a wake, that's still very traditional for descendants of the Celts and that part of the world, or that for many years in Western culture, the expectation was that mourning should go on for a full year after the death for a family, that one should wear black to a funeral, and for families, for a set length of time after the funeral. There's the 7-day Jewish Shiva, which is a mourning period for the immediate family, where it's expected that they're going to stay home, wear a torn garment, and they're visited by their community to support them and share their grief. In many cultures around the world, wailing and ritual lamentations are a normal part of mourning rituals. These traditions are a way for people to process loss together. But in our modern world, mourning has become this strange combination of feeling like our grief itself should be done privately and sometimes even hidden, while at the same time, mourning has often become as much a very public experience, with people sharing their grief and loss and mourning on social media for the entire world to see, or at least their vast list of social media contacts, as it is an in-person community experience, if not more. The thing is, though, we might post a tribute, a photo, or a meme about our pain on social media, hold a funeral or a memorial service with our friends and family, and wear something symbolic for a few days. But the deeper work of grief often happens behind closed doors, if it happens at all. And to me, that's kind of where the problem lies, because grief needs expression. It needs a community. It wants to be witnessed and shared, not solved, not fixed, and certainly not packed into a 3-day window and then ignored. It needs to be felt. And people who are grieving need to feel seen. And when that doesn't happen and we try to trap our grief inside, it can become complicated, prolonged, and it can have long-term consequences to our emotional, mental, and physical health. And here's how I think we're getting it wrong now. Somewhere along the way, we decided that grief should be neat, tidy, managed, private, and fit into this timeline. Showing or expressing our pain is seen as a character flaw or a sign of weakness, especially in public, and especially if it's outside of the confines of our home or the funeral service if we had one. We've moved from holding funerals to having a celebration of life, which, don't get me wrong, I don't see anything wrong with celebration of life events if the intent is community and sharing our grief. But if it's meant to force ourselves and others to keep that grief part hidden, hiding behind celebrating the life of our loved one, I think we're maybe eliminating an important function of these rituals, which is to share our pain and to comfort each other. We started using words like closure and phrases like moving on, as though grief were a project that we could wrap up neatly in a certain length of time and file it away in a drawer marked done. Modern workplaces often allow very limited bereavement time, commonly only 3 days, another way of telling us that we're expected to return to normalcy quickly and not disrupt anyone else's life or business with our, messy emotions and grief. We're expected to return to work after a few days with a smile on our face and agreeable attitude, behave like our normal selves and keep up with our responsibilities, respond to messages as though our entire world hadn't just shifted off its axis. And when we don't, when we struggle to concentrate, we're exhausted because we're not sleeping, or we still cry about it months later, not only do some of the people around us start to get impatient with us, at least the ones who have never gone through it, but we get impatient with ourselves. We start wondering, what's wrong with me? Shouldn't I be over it by now? And we seldom talk about the disenfranchised grief, as it's called, from losses that society fails to even acknowledge. Divorce, job loss, decline in health or abilities, the loss of a partner in an undisclosed relationship. For example, in an LGBTQ relationship that's been kept private, or any kind of relationship that's been held in secret, where people don't feel they have the right to mourn publicly. But I have a truth bomb for you. Maybe not so much if you've been around here for a while with me, but grief doesn't work like that. It's a neurological response that we literally have no control over whether and how it happens. Our brain controls that, whether we like how it's running the train or not. It's not linear. It's not logical. It does not have a schedule, a specified route, or a terminal station where you can get off and thank goodness the trip's over. It's a normal human experience that our modern world doesn't seem to make much time for. And I'm here to tell you that there is nothing wrong with you. And you don't necessarily get over grief. It changes. It softens. You can learn to build a life around your loss. But there's no timeline, no matter how badly the people around you want there to be. And I think we need to understand that where all that discomfort around grief and the grief process comes from, it's coming from a culture that doesn't know what to do with pain that it can't fix. Because we live in a society that's all about fixing people. Whether it's a broken leg or a broken heart, we want to fix it, and we want to fix it as fast as we can. We want to know, is there a pill or a treatment for this, and how quickly am I going to recover? But grief can't be fixed. It doesn't like being ignored. And when we try to suppress it, whether it's with a pill or willpower, it can have serious consequences to our mental and physical health, and it will come back and bite us in the ass. And I want to get into something that I think is complicating things even more. Very few of us don't have at least one social media app, whether it's on our phone or our computer. If you're listening to this on your phone or watching the enhanced version on YouTube, I'm going to throw it out there that you're fairly likely to have a bunch of other apps too. Some might be true social media apps like Facebook and Instagram and TikTok. Others might be primarily messaging apps like Snapchat and WhatsApp, Messenger, or even just your texting app. But almost everyone's got them. And I think while technology has improved our ability to communicate and stay connected with people who are far away, sometimes that can come at a cost. On one hand, the ability to instant message by email, text, and messaging apps has made it easier to very inexpensively stay in contact with people over long distances. The ability to access the internet from not just a computer but on tablets and our smartphones has opened up the availability of online counseling and support groups for people who don't have access to a computer, who maybe live in a remote area, have limited access to transportation, or have mobility issues. That's all wonderful. But, and here's the other side of the coin, for me, it's also robbed us of the proclivity to maintain more personal connections, like phone calls and in-person get-togethers with the people who live near enough for us to do that. And being face-to-face with someone releases important neurochemicals like oxytocin, dopamine, serotonin, and in-person, like face-to-face connections release even more of those. And a hug, boy, you've just bathed your brain and nervous system in feel-good pleasure and stress-releasing neurochemicals. These are things that the more primitive parts of our brains need in order to feel truly safe and connected. We're just biologically wired to need them. And let's be frank. While social media has provided connections with a wide quasi-community of contacts, allowing us to connect more easily and more frequently with past school friends, family that lives far away, and meet lots of people who share similar interests. On the other hand, for most of us, the vast majority of our connections are superficial at best, and at worst, with people we don't actually even know. And here's another thing. So, the human brain spends a lot of time comparing ourselves to others, positively and negatively. We compare down when we think we're doing better in some ways than someone else, and We're comparing up when we feel like we or something in our life is inferior to someone else's. Literally, unconsciously, and constantly. Social media algorithms feed on that tendency. So when we see polished tributes, well-worded posts and memes, or others who post frequently about the emotional toll the loss is taking on them, there can surface this unspoken pressure in us to perform our pain, to out-meme them, to out-grieve them, or search for comfort and validation of our pain through emojis and comments. And when we start to compare our grief to someone else's posts about pain or healing, it can make us question whether we're grieving the right way. And what I find can be really sad about this is that although we might receive heart or hug emojis and, sometimes comments from people saying, thinking of you, they saw that post during their doom scroll. And they're seldom truly connecting with us and sitting with us in our sorrow. And an emoji or condolence comment, it's not the same thing as someone showing up with a casserole, sitting with us on our couch and saying nothing at all and just being there with us. And I get it. I truly get it. Sometimes at 3 a.m, when a wave of grief comes over us, or we're looking through the photo gallery on our phones, we do just need to reach out somewhere to let someone know that we're thinking of the person we miss and we're grieving. And sharing our grief does help to ease its pain. But here's another thought to consider. For those who need it, someplace like Facebook can become a lasting online memorial to their loved one, where they can go to privately scroll back through their photos and their life anytime they want or need it. And the truth is that I actually paid a considerable sum of money to do something like this for my son on a memorial site not long after he died, which was quite a while before Facebook really became the massive platform it is now. But on the other hand, for others, that algorithm that posts those on this day reminders that show up on our profile page, they can cause unexpected and painful memories to surface. And, when you're not expecting them, they can cause considerable distress. So, oh my, the conundrum. If this episode is making you nod or giving you a little pause for thought, or if you're worried that because of anything I've talked about, you might be doing it wrong, you're not. You're not doing grief wrong. You're allowed to take time. You're allowed to take the space that you need. And I've put together some tools to help. You can go ahead and grab them for free at transformativejourneys.ca on the Joanna's Toolboxes page, and I'll put a link in the show notes. So, how did we get here? To this place where something everyone feels at some time or another has become something we have difficulty expressing. We're uncomfortable with others seeing, and that we feel pressured to get over and get back to normal after. Part of it, I think, has to do with how our world has changed, not just in the past century, but even in the past few decades. In spite of all of our modern conveniences, our scheduling apps, and our striving for ways to find work-life balance, we are getting busier and busier between work or school, constant notifications, endless to-do lists. We tell ourselves we don't have time for this grief thing. We have places to be. We have things to do. We have responsibilities. We're told that talking too much about it means we're stuck. That strong people grieve quietly. And that you have to learn how to move on. If we grieve too long or too hard, we should get counseling. If we feel we need social support, we often have to find it in support groups instead of within our immediate community. If we struggle, we're told we're allowing ourselves to become a victim. From an evolutionary standpoint, neuroscience tells us that even the most introverted of us are social creatures. We're not wired for emotional isolation. Physical proximity and positive social interactions through voice, touch, presence, and empathy reduces levels of stress hormones and enhances our sense of security and overall well-being. So when someone sits beside us and simply says, "I'm here with you," it calms our brain's threat response. It tells our amygdala, you're not alone. You're safe right now. And with most of us now living in cities and large towns and no longer belonging to tight-knit social or geographic communities, where does that leave us? One of the first and most important things I think we need to do in order to begin navigating in a world that isn't always comfortable with or accommodating to grief is to give ourselves permission to grieve in the ways that feel right for us. Because there is no right way. Some people need stillness, and they find comfort in a quiet presence beside them or just in the same general vicinity. Others need their space filled with people. Some need to talk, others need silence. Some people need to express their grief and mourning publicly. Others prefer to do it quietly and in private. Your way, that's the right way. Mourning, that act of expressing our grief, may not look like it once did, or like it does in other cultures, whether that's the culture you came from or not. The right ritual, the right way to mourn, is the way that feels meaningful to you. And if your ritual doesn't fit with everyone else in your life's expectations, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with having more than one. When my son died, I had to sort out how to incorporate the Christian funeral service that my family expected with the agreement that my son and I had made to each other that was exactly not what either one of us wanted. And for a little context, maybe weirdly, when he got his driver's license, he came to me to ask about the organ donation card. It used to be a card that you actually slipped into your wallet with your driver's license card. And we had a conversation about, if one of us died first. When I, of course, told him, "I'm your mother, I'm going to die first, and you're going to have to take care of this." But anyways, we had agreed that we didn't want a traditional religious funeral. Either one of us. We both wanted ceremonies based on our own earth-based belief system. Anyways, in that fog of grief, right after he died, I moved ahead with a traditional funeral service with my uncle, who's a minister, presiding, because that was the family's expectation. And the guilt literally ate away at me until I finally reached out to some friends who are part of a community of earth-based beliefs, including Indigenous and pagan. And they helped me to have an earth-based ceremony that he would have wanted before his ashes were interned at the cemetery. So maybe your ritual and what gives you comfort isn't a formal ceremony at all. Maybe part of it is scattering your loved one's ashes in a place that they loved. Maybe it's lighting a candle each morning or once a week at your place of worship. Maybe it's journaling, taking long walks to talk to them, or weekly visits to where they're buried or interred. And let me add here, only for as long as you feel you need to. Rituals are never carved in stone, and they can be changed and modified whenever and however you need them to be. Rituals don't have to be traditional. They just have to be meaningful to you. And while grief may be personal, healing often happens in connection, though. So if you can, reach out, even if it's just to one safe person who can listen without trying to fix it. Find or create spaces where you can share your story, because being witnessed in your grief can be profoundly healing. So if you have a notebook or a paper handy with you today, I actually have a few different prompts for you to choose from for wherever you are on your journey. Choose one, use them all, write your answers out, or just take the thoughts with you on your next walk. As always, be kind to yourself when you're asking, what does grief look like for me today? Who can I safely talk to when I'm struggling? What rituals or acts of remembrance feel comforting right now? What expectations, mine or others, can I let go of? I know today's conversation might have stirred up some emotion, and that's okay. Grief is messy stuff. As we wrap up, if you take one thing from this episode, I hope it's this. Your grief and your healing aren't taking too long. You're grieving in a world that's forgotten how to slow down. So of course it's going to feel out of sync sometimes. So take your time. Let your healing unfold at its own pace. And remember, you're not alone on this journey. Next week, we're going to be shifting into something that can feel especially difficult at this time of year for some. And it's navigating those holiday firsts. We'll talk about the emotional weight of family gatherings, setting boundaries, finding meaning in new traditions, and creating space for both grief and joy to coexist. Until then, be gentle with yourself. Take a breath, take a walk, light a candle if that helps, and know that you're doing the best you can in a world that doesn't always make things easy. Thank you for being here with me today. Come and say hi to me on Instagram at transformativejourneys.joanna, or visit my website and say hi there. If you've got an idea you'd like to hear me talk about, leave me a message. You might see it in a future episode. And lastly, you know that hitting that subscribe button and tapping the bell icon or like or whatever your platform has helps my show get noticed, right? So I will make you a deal. You tap it, and I will keep dropping the best of what's in my heart and soul so that we can keep learning together. Until next time, this is Joanna reminding you that it doesn't matter if you fall. What matters is how well you bounce. This is Transformative Journeys. See you next time. If you'd like to learn more about Threads of Life, a Canadian non-profit organization that offers families who've experienced workplace tragedy, community, peer support, and education, and the organization that's been such an important part of my own healing journey, you can find them at threadsoflife.ca. Your support helps me keep creating free tools and honest conversations, because let's be real, even when you love what you're doing, sometimes it takes a whole lot of metaphorical duct tape to hold it all together. If you'd like to toss a little love into the duct tape fund, you can now support the podcast at buymeacoffee.com. I'll put a link in the show notes. Just wanted to throw in a disclaimer. This podcast is for entertainment and informational purposes only and should not replace the advice of a medical or mental health expert. I'm not a licensed counselor or a therapist, just a human with a mic and a story of growth and resilience. No degree, no fancy letters after my name. I'm a full-time student at the School of Hard Knocks, University of Life, where I figure I'll graduate when I take my last breath. In other words, I'm just Joanna, a fellow human being on my journey through this thing called life, and your concierge on this transformative journey.